Given what the Deputy Secretary said today about returning to their barracks would mean de-escalation, does that mean that the U.S. would take actions, including sanctions, if they do not return to their barracks, absent a move across the border?
We've been very clear that if the Russians were to go forward with an invasion, they will face massive consequences.
That's what constitutes aggression.
Well, so I think the question of aggression versus the question of an invasion, those are two separate issues. We will, and we have, and previous administrations have as well, seek to hold the Russians to account for their aggressive actions, whether vis-a-vis Ukraine, whether vis-a-vis any other realm. And this administration has done that. We did that in the first weeks in office, and we've done that since on issues as disparate as election interference, the use of chemical weapons.
In the context of this disagreement.
Now, I would take issue with the idea that this is a disagreement. This is not a disagreement. One side has 100,000 troops amassed on the border with Ukraine. The other side is pointing that out, and the other side is taking. In the context of what we're seeing now, we have said that these strong, unprecedented measures that we very intentionally did not utilize, the United States has not utilized up until now, that they would be implemented in concert with our allies and partners if Russia were to invade Ukraine, if it were to move forward with that aggression. Now, that doesn't mean that even if Russia doesn't move forward with an invasion, that we expect Russia will turn into an entirely benign influence and actor. But we also have other means to continue to hold Russia to account for the types of activities it has engaged in in recent years. But what we are talking about with these unprecedented strong measures that we would implement together with our allies and partners, would be in response to a Russian invasion.
So what actions are you prepared to take to get Russia to move the troops back from the border, de-escalate, and back into their barracks?
Well, again, this is part of the reason why we're engaged in diplomacy with them, whether it's through the SSD, whether it is in the context of NATO, whether it's in the OSCE. The only point I would emphasize here, and again, we're not going to put our entire playbook on the table for reasons that I'm sure are obvious, but the only point I would make here is that we aren't talking about concessions. We aren't talking about unilateral U.S. steps or unilateral NATO steps or European steps. We are talking about reciprocal measures, meaning that if we were to do something, the Russians would in turn have to do something, whether it's in the bilateral context that redounds positively on our security concerns, in the European context, which redounds positively on the transatlantic security concerns, or NATO, or when it comes to Ukraine. So that's what we'll be looking for. But again, that's the reason why we're engaged in this diplomacy, to test the proposition that there are fruitful areas where we can arrive at these mutual reciprocal steps that would address the various security concerns that have been put on the table. Joel.